Hi, welcome to Friday. Take two, because once again the speakers went out on my laptop, so evidently that wasn't corrected. This is life. So what I was talking about is I wanted to say thank you so much for the response that you sent back in for the are you living a life or the life that you want to live? Because it had such a great interaction, and I got a lot of emails and messages and thanks, Deb, and feedback from it that it really struck a chord in people. And that is ultimately what I want to do, is to not only strike that chord, but then you guys can make music from it. Haha, bad pun. So what I wanted to talk about this week was the extension of that, right? That if you want to live the life that is most in alignment for you, then I feel like we have to be willing to connect in with what isn't always in alignment. And when you come into my office, there are a bunch of boxes of tissues around. And not so much because of my sinuses, but because there's a lot of energy that comes up when in a session, and it can be, trauma that you've been through, or memories that you didn't think still bugged you, or sometimes those tears are joyful tears because you've just discovered something about yourself that was, maybe even hidden from you. So we got to have them at the ready. And so often people apologize to me for crying. Now, I have the tissues there for a reason, so I obviously know there are going to be tears. But the first response that I get from people is, I don't know why I'm crying. I'm sorry I'm crying. We have a visitor again today, so she's a little bit of an attention need as soon as I come home. So the thing that I wanted to talk about was in order to have a life that completely lines up with yourself and feels the most supportive and joyful even, is we have to be willing to embrace the pain. There's no way to get out of this life unless you're completely oblivious without some kind of conflict, some kind of pain, some kind of contrast. So I've seen people in some of the most vulnerable places in their lives, people passing, illnesses, trauma, like I was saying, just utter frustration because, I know myself, if I am frustrated about a situation, the tears will flow. They'll just completely flow. I think they're trying to clear clutter or something. And it ends up being a catharsis. So if we avoid that, if we completely avoid any feeling of anything but joyful, then we're missing a lot of information. And oftentimes people want to move right past it. Let's just get right over it and not delve into it or pay any attention to it. My personal favorite is when somebody is talking and they say something that might be perceived by others as negative, and they're like, oh, cancel. I'm like, seriously? Like, what is that going to do? Are you Harry Potter? Do you have a magic wand? You don't, and none of us do. So if you're willing to be in the presence and in the education of pain, you can get a lot of information from that, including your body. Like when you have an area that's bothering you, unless you completely tweaked it and you know what you did, you might want to ask, where is that coming from? Because a large portion of the pain that we have within our physical body is trapped energy. And so if you're having a difficulty with your shoulder or your traps or something along those lines, like what are you carrying that's so burdensome to you that you're not looking at it? And a lot of the times when you look at it, it releases a lot of pain in your wrists or in your forearms, unless you really got that carpal tunnel thing going, and your repetitive action, a lot of mouse and phone time. You might want to look at what is it that feels heavy, that feels like it's a strain, again, to carry in your life. In your back, are you not supported? Got some knee problems? Are you having some difficulty moving forward? Now, if something's bleeding or is happening, you need to get it checked out. Like, don't just say, oh, that's trapped energy and it'll move along. We have to practice due diligence in that. But it's very relative to every human that's here, that if there's some kind of pain going on and you look at it in an energetic standpoint in conjunction with a physical standpoint, you often can come to a resolution much sooner. Sometimes it's because that trainer made you do so many squats and you can't walk downstairs and stuff, and that would be completely relatable and not at all trapped energy, simply sore buns. So in looking at the aspects of having our most aligned life, the pain place gives us a lot of information, because if you're feeling the emotional pain, that's giving you a mirror to look at, to say, is this something that I need to address? And is this an area that I'm no longer willing to put up with something? It used to be my first inclination was to rush in there and help people heal their pain and just take away the pain, not help them heal it. I wanted to take away that pain. No matter who was suffering it, I just wanted to make everything okay and was sure I could do it, and then in the process ended up giving myself my own pains. But that's not really serving of anyone, because again, that pain is an indication that something is out of alignment. Something is causing you to want to pay attention. And you can put the blinders on and you can ignore. Many people do for decades and decades and decades. But eventually it starts to gnaw at you and create a problem, and that can create a problem in your own relationships, because if you're not willing to look at your own stuff and you put blinders on, often we're not the best assessors of the people in our lives, and we'll even put up with pain that's not ours to carry. So there is no magic wand to moving through this experience. Have you ever heard that expression, the only way out is through? That was pretty impressive. She cleared the whole chair. So the only way we can get, well, maybe the only way up for her is over. So if you take a moment and you look at the situation and what's causing the contrast, you can then create the plan to move through it. I do not recommend moving full speed ahead. I think it's important for us to look at and feel and ask all the questions in what's in my best interest, what's causing this pain. Is this my pain, or am I carrying generational pain? Is this pain that was passed down in messages through the family? Am I still carrying something around with me that isn't even today? Because on other levels, the pain that you could be experiencing may in fact be because you're telling a story of a situation rather than how it pertains to you today. Like, is that memory of the pain? Is the pain really the memory rather than the experience, because you're already past the experience? And yes, I know it becomes somewhat embedded in our neural pathways and in our cells. But as adults, we have a responsibility to look at that and to see what we can free up, or we just need to stop complaining, because there's choice and there's help, and there are ways to elevate your own vibration if you're willing to look at it. The alignment that you're looking for, if you're wanting the best life for you or the life for you, I don't even think it has to be best, because I think when we set that premise of it has to be the best, you've already set a comparison, and maybe the day would be wonderful if you didn't set that bar of this has to be the best day ever, because that's a lot of pressure. So the pain can be emotional, physical, spiritual, mental, collective. There are a bunch of different layers and levels and ways that pain gets presented and presents itself within us. And I feel like it's important that we honor someone's pain. I also feel like it's really important to hold the space and to help someone, including ourselves, understand that you don't have to live in that pain. If you're living in the pain, and I'm going to trust that you're all intelligent beings and know that I'm not talking about domestic or violence or anything like that. But if you're living in that pain, there's some part of you that benefits from it. There's some part of you that wants to stay in the conflicted place. You may not know what it is. I'm not saying this is conscious, and you may need help in identifying. You know, a lot of the times when someone says, well, I don't want to be in this place anymore, I'll say, okay, let's figure out what's working for you then. Because something must be working for you in order to hold you in that space. And it does not make sense to your logical brains. Why it's called an illogical thought. It's not going to make sense. But if you're willing to identify what is causing the discord in my life, or the sadness, or the anger, because unexpressed pain, anger, all of that, if you're willing to look at it, it can be released fairly easily. I'm not saying without tissues, and maybe even some heaving sobs, but that would be very cathartic for your system as well. We can't change or heal someone else's pain. That is not our responsibility. I feel like, at least their emotional or mental, I feel like oftentimes the most help I've been to someone is because I won't join them in their pain. I can see they're going through it, and you'll get a heck of a hug afterwards if we're in person. But I'm not going to join you in there, because I really believe that humans are amazing, and they are capable of shifting and coming through some of the most devastating experiences with the most beautiful souls and examples of being and connected with themselves, being and connected with themselves. So the healing, for someone to want to heal, they need to do it with them in themselves, and they have to be willing to do it too. And that can take people time to get to, and it's none of our dang business how long it takes somebody to come to the place where they realize that I'd really rather not be carrying this pain anymore. And it happens, for any of us, even, those who have been quote unquote working on themselves or looking at their stuff for decades, there are always going to be layers. There are always going to be opportunities to look at things and to see, have I just been seeing that all through my own lens and not necessarily in what the truth is? I had an experience of this in my own life about a week and a half ago, where I was sitting in the middle of a group of people and feeling, completely alone, feeling very solitary, like I'm just walking this path of mine so individually, which is what I encourage. So I do see the oxymoron there. And then immediately after my subconscious came up with that kind of poor me scenario, I said, you know what? No, You are not the only person who walked in here by themselves. You are not the only single person on the planet. You are not the only one running a solo business, because the subconscious wanted to come in and wanted me to tell an old story. And thankfully, because I'm willing to see those things as they drop in, I was able, without anybody around me knowing, I was able to say, no, thank you. That is not the pain or the story that I would like to live in any longer, because it's not true. And the circumstances are, because no one else picks up this condo but me. I don't know what that's all about, but can't get the ghost to help at all. But so the logistics of it are true, but if I'm feeling isolated and no one else in my world, I'm doing that to me, because it's not the truth. And I feel like if we're willing to kind of face those things when they drop in and recognize there's nothing wrong with me because I had that perception, but there is something that I can shift and bring into closer alignment with what my beliefs are. Because when you move around your beliefs and you expand and you let go of things, stuff pops up. It just does. And I feel like the pain that people feel is valid, but the circumstances and the story around it aren't always valid. And if we're willing to have a little sit down, a little chat, maybe a cup of coffee with it, it dissipates. And I think sometimes that subconscious is like a little kid who just needs to be seen. The process of feeling good within yourself and being in the life that you would like to lead, including from a manifesting standpoint, is to take off the blinders and to look at what's happening. If you have a lot of anxiousness, anxiety, frustration, and stuff like that, you're avoiding something. And I may be one of those people that's just like, let's get in there, and that's my wiring, but I can avoid with the best of you. However, I made a commitment to myself a couple years ago that I knew that wasn't working, so I was going to stop that. And I feel like I don't have any corner market on strength. I feel like I just have the knowledge that I'm not going to poof into space if I look at something that's uncomfortable. I'm likely to be more miserable longer if I don't look at it. So the inquisitiveness about why is this showing up, or is this really true? Is this impacting my life today other than by carrying it around, is important, because sometimes people want to sit in their shit. They just do. And we're all capable of it. It's kind of gross when you think about it, but the idea that I'm safer to sit in my story rather than to move through it is an old one, very, very centuries old. But the idea that your knowledge is your power and your ability to know more and more about yourself can dissipate the pain. I'm not saying you're going to go through life without pain. It's going to be there. But it doesn't have to drag out forever and a day afterwards because somebody said something to you, or that thing that happened 22 years ago that you're still holding on to because some part of your brain wants the limitation process. Use it for a way to relieve yourself from further pain by meeting it face on and being able to say, I see you there, but you're not the big scary monster in the corner. You're the sweatshirt I forgot to put away last night. So the process is very individual, and every person I work with, when they walk in, I hold a very clean space. Like, I don't have a cookie cutter version of how we're going to work with this, because everyone's experienced their life in a very different way. What I will ask everyone to do is to create a place of introspection, and being willing to look at whatever it is. Because most of the time, that's really what's being avoided, because maybe we want more. But if I keep focusing on the pain of the past, I never have to admit that my soul wants to grow and I want some more. So I think we have to be honest and look at it. I am a big fan of call it like it is. And if there's pain there, let's call it pain. Let's identify that that wasn't fair, that somebody talked to me that way, or my sense of self was diminished when I went through that experience. Let's name it, call it, move forward. We will not blame or shame, not in my room. And that means blaming other people, shaming other people. It's not going to work. So, because it just puts more on you. So, this week, where is it? Well, don't go looking for it. Walk through your day-to-day life. And when something comes up, you can feel the discord. You can feel when something isn't sitting well. And if you can't deal with it in right that moment, maybe you can't look at it then because you're in the middle of your workday or whatever, make a note, mental note on your phone, paper, something that you'll ask yourself later, do I want to be in the life for me? Is this holding me back from being in the life for me? What am I willing to do in order to move this through? Do I need to talk to my therapist, my coach? Do I need to do a meditation? Do I need to go ride my horse? Something that allows for that knowledge to come forth. And then what do I have to do about it? Do I have to write a letter and not send it? But do I need to write a letter to someone because I'm holding the pain? It's not hurting the other person, it's hurting you. And then shred it or burn it. So these kind of practices where you are literally peeling away the stuff that you've been carrying around and becoming lighter and lighter and becoming minimalist, and getting rid of not just the clutter in your home, but the clutter in your head and the clutter in your heart. Because again, to circle back to the beginning, they will become disease process if you don't address it. So I want to see what Deb said here. Won't let me see the rest of it, but she says, you're the only one who thinks you're a third wheel because we don't feel that way. Coming from friends, I've had that experience too, where I always feel like the single person going in. Most of the time it doesn't faze me because my husband wasn't a real joiner. So a lot of the times I was there on my own anyway. So that, but it does start to feel that way sometimes. And then we have to ask other people what their perception is. And hopefully you get that feedback, because I don't know, I'm a lot of fun to hang out with. So, I might be bringing my solo self. It's only when the subconscious tries to kick in there and say, this one thing is different than the rest. I choose to see my individuality in another way, and hopefully you guys can too. So be a friend, or at least a nice traveling partner to whatever discord or pain is coming up, so that you can begin to learn more about what's packed in there and what needs to be released. Because boy, you just end up lighter and lighter and lighter and joyful. And I think that's a gift that we need to give our souls, and then, spread that out in the rest of the world. So thank you for joining me. I hope you have a good weekend. If you got some pain you can't move, you know where to find me. And this weekend, tomorrow, actually, there's still some spots open for the vision board class. Christy is leading that. I am not teaching this one, but I handpicked her because I know that we operate very similarly in our belief systems, and the fact that we want people to have as much information as possible to go on and create their lives. So if you're interested, you can simply go to VickiBaird.com, sign up. and bring any magazines or stuff that you'd like to add to it. It's a 2-hour class. They'll be teaching along with the actual making of the boards, because a vision board can help you to create. It can help you to release. You could do a board about releasing whatever you've been holding on to, except I wouldn't want you to hold on to it afterwards. I would want you to have a ceremonial burning. So check that out if you'd like to attend. It's 9 to 11 tomorrow, and it's always a good time. And I hope you have a great week, and you begin to look at whatever emotion is coming up as an indication that your soul wants you to have your greatest life. So talk to you soon.